Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Quick intro. I'm, as Jared said, Senior Development Manager at DSD. But what I think matters most for today's purposes is that I also sit on the board for a nonprofit. So we're speaking the same language when we know firsthand what it means to wear all kinds of hats and do more with less and still stay focused on the mission that you showed up to in the first place. And that is exactly why I am super passionate about what we're going to show you today. A little about DSD Business Systems, the partner holding this webinar. We have been in business for over 40 years, helping organizations choose and implement the right technology to accomplish more with their businesses and orgs. And everything we do is grounded in these values that you see here. We're always going to be focused on listening, supporting our clients, our partners, and the communities that we serve. So just know that we're here for you to have, no pressure conversations and provide advice or anything that would be helpful to you. And that's just what we do. Talking a little bit about these values and technology in action and the outcomes that it can have. Because look, you're going to hear all sorts of things about software doing impressive things with, especially these days with AI and end-to-end cloud solutions. But I always want to help you stay grounded in the why and the why for you. And I think it's important to know that when your systems are connected, and when we're talking about nonprofits, from that very first donor touch point or even potential donor touch point, all the way through to board reporting, something shifts. What we see consistently is that when fundraising and finance are connected, you don't just save time, you are able to earn more trust, raise more funds, and do more good works by delivering on your mission impact. Here's this in practice. So First Baptist, as you can see, implemented Intacct and DonorPerfect together, and they saw a 20% increase in overall efficiency. And they were able to calculate that this saved them 12 hours per month. And more importantly is that confidence that was gained in the accuracy of the reporting. That confidence really matters. It affects how you show up to your board, your donors, and your grantors. Donors choose. They came from a black bot environment, and after this switch, 50 plus hours saved each month and 60% faster month end close. That is not a small thing. And I think it's always important to consider that that time that you're saving goes back to the mission and goes back to doing the things that you always wish you had the time for. I know I have a list as long as my arm of those things that I need time to do. Canine companions, 50% faster gift processing, half the time, with the same team, same resources, just providing more capacity to get more gifts. What I'm really hoping that you'll walk away with today is that this visibility we keep talking, these buzzwords we keep talking about, the visibility into campaigns, funding, programs, and reporting strengthens donor confidence and supports long-term giving. It can help you have the time to go after the grants you might not have been able to apply to, and it directly impacts your revenue. So just please keep in mind as you're looking at all these fancy tools that this isn't just about being organized. connected systems absolutely will change what's possible for your organization. And now I get to hand it over to someone else who's very familiar with where you sit right now. Daryl has come from a fundraising background, so he's been in your shoes, as have many of the folks on the DonorPerfect team. And he will be showing you live DonorPerfect and how that can help your organization. So here you go, Daryl.
Great. And thank you, Nicole. Thanks for the intro. And as Nicole shared, my experience in nonprofits has been a bit lengthy. I started out as a software developer and had to write integrations between various systems and connecting funds and donors and so forth. And now here at DonorPerfect, I manage partnerships and looking for additional connections where businesses can plug together their systems and generate efficiencies for the nonprofits, so many of which Nicole pointed out from the case studies that we see there. In addition to being a technology person, I've also served on the board of my local food pantry for about 9 years and was an active volunteer in 2 other nonprofit organizations in my community. So I'm familiar with what it's like to sit around on the monthly board meetings and actually try and get a grasp of what's happening from the fundraising perspective. But that said, so DonorPerfect, and you're going to hear me use 2 different terms. And so there's also a product called Sage Intacct Fundraising powered by DonorPerfect, which is pretty much our elite level product that DonorPerfect provides, that Sage has put a connector and a wrapper around it. And Sage Intacct Fundraising is a product that is available through DSD. And this is what we're really here to talk about, but at its core is the functionality that exists with DonorPerfect. So as Nicole said, our employees at DonorPerfect, so many of them are coming from nonprofit and technology backgrounds, and so they know the surface area of what we're trying to deliver on here. We work with our customers. If you've ever worked with any of the support team or the implementation team at DonorPerfect, they are absolutely top notch. They're people-based, and we make sure that we get the questions answered in a very timely manner. We've got an A+ rating, and the customer success, we've been doing this for in excess of 35 years, and we currently have what's almost now 11,000 nonprofits and raised over $300 billion through our systems. So it's a seasoned company, but a very modern solution. It is fully cloud-based. What I'm going to show you is we'll walk you through some of the screens that'll give you a sense of how contemporary it can be as well. And satisfaction, 93% of our customers stay because they're happy. And one other thing that I mentioned is just because we've been working and competing with products like Blackbaud, we do very well at converting a Blackbaud client where we have almost a 99% retention rate of people that have moved over from that solution. Everybody still there?
Yep.
Indeed.
All right, let me just see what happened to my. Go ahead and reshare. So the next piece that we really wanted to talk about was the connectedness of solutions.
Hey, Daryl, real quick, you're not sharing screen right now.
Yeah, let me go ahead and make that change. For just a second here. Here we go. Okay, so what we really wanted to talk about was the connectedness of systems, and the integration with the Sage Intacct is one component of that, But it also begins with, where does the donation start? Whether it's an online donation or a check that's being processed that came in through the mail. These are all functions that need to exist within fractions of a second. So from the moment that you end up getting a gift on your website, you're going to see that gift appear inside of DonorPerfect. We even have solutions and capabilities to automate the thank you process, whether you're going to be sending an email or even a printed actual thank you card that can get sent out automatically just from the system detecting that a gift has arrived. Part of this is streamlining your solution so that you are saving time for your organization and that your team is able to maximize the efficiency of the fundraiser so that your investment can be spent more on the programs that you're offering and less in terms of the administration to try and raise the money. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these features. And so DonorPerfect is the complete solution. We are a fundraising CRM. If many of you are familiar with the word CRM, customer relationship management, we are the record keeper for your donors. We want to know everything about them, the history that's in there. We want to know their gift history. We want to know whether or not they're opening or clicking on our emails. We want to know if they've attended events, if they're actually a volunteer. All of these things comprise how well your fundraising team is going to be able to solicit donations and grow your fundraising base. And especially in this time of economic change and political change where grants are very hard to come by, fundraising has become an incredibly important solution to supplementing the funding that may have been more difficult to get now through the grants and so forth. So as part of that complete solution, we actually help our clients with onboarding onto our system. We have data conversions written for a variety of systems that are out there. Some clients come to us from Excel. As we mentioned, they may come from Razor's Edge or Salesforce. Even the Milford Baptist Church, in their case study, they talked about the transition of coming off of Salesforce onto a fundraising platform, which is a fundraising CRM for DonorPerfect. We do the data transfer and the training so that your team is ready to go and able to use the system in its best possible means. So that said, I'm going to change to a different screen here. Hopefully it'll go a little bit smoother than last. And I'm going to take you to what is essentially the an example fundraising page. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on donate, and hopefully all of you can see that I'm now onto a donation form. And I want to point out some key things here. This is our latest iteration of our donation forms that is included with DonorPerfect. And so a couple of things. You see that there's social proof that is dropping down from the top of the web page. Adam in California gave 110. These are things that came from companies like Shopify and so forth that are producing the best-in-class e-commerce solutions. Also, at the top of our giving form, we have goal-based fundraising. On that $300,000 goal, we've achieved 143. And when you've got a donor who's looking to give a significant gift, they want to know what the target is. They want to know if their impact is going to get you just a little bit closer to what that 300,000 goal is. The other piece that we want to really try and focus on is the one-time gift to the monthly gift. There are all kinds of statistics that are out there that converting your donors to a monthly gift improves their retention, improves their how much they pay attention to your organization, as well as the overall giving does end up increasing. A few other things that I can show you here is the ability to give designated giving, which I want to try and emphasize that one of the great things about the integration with Sage is that we can actually create fund accounting with a designated gift going to be the income for that fund. And then your expenses are coming out of that so that you know what the net availability of spend is at any given moment. So you're able to run your organization very efficiently. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the general donation, which is what we know that everybody prefers. And I'm going to go ahead and click donate. So a few other things that I want to point out here, even though I said I was giving 225, I think we're all pretty accustomed to this right now. There's a $22 cover the costs and fees of what my donation is right now. And that $22 is actually something that can vary. We've actually found that organizations have relabeled this, and instead of it called donors covers costs, it can actually be considered a tipping mechanism. Some donors have even tipped as much as 15% on top of what their original gift was, because they now recognize that there are costs associated with running a nonprofit organization. I could choose to keep it anonymous, but I'm going to go ahead and bring this one through as a credit card. But one of the pieces I'm going to mention here is there are multiple payment types that are available, including Google Pay, Apple Pay, and our latest payment mechanism is DAF Pay, which is a donor advised fund. And if you're not receiving those today, try and seek out donors who may have given to their donor advised fund. And then when they give to your organization, they're already pre-taxed and they're prone to give even larger donations because they're giving it out of a pool that they knew they were going to donate to charity in the first place. In this situation, I'm going to go ahead and bring it up through a credit card. And please don't anybody copy my secret credit card down, but it just happens to work for our demo site here. And let me go ahead and enter. Some information about my gift. And as I give that gift, super important is to make sure that you have a donation tool that is detecting fraud and making sure that there isn't any kind of card testing that is going on. So I'm going to select that I'm not a robot, and it will actually bypass this time the requirement that I have to give a code. Notice the confetti, but then immediately it takes me to upgrade your impact. How important this is, we mentioned before, I could convert my gift to a monthly gift, and that keeps me retained as a donor. I'm going to go ahead and skip that for the moment, and I could also double my impact. So many of your donors may actually be capable of giving a matching gift through their employer. So whether I choose software or Home Depot, what this is now going to do is it's going to send me an email with the key information about Home Depot's matching gift program. If it's an online application, it's going to nudge me to complete that. If it's a paper application, it's going to point me to the HR team on where I can download that paper so that the gift that I just made in excess of $200 now can become $500. Whether or not I want to be added to the email updates to the organization. And one thing that's important about the Sage Intacct fundraising product by DonorPerfect is it includes a copy of Constant Contact. So you're getting the best in class email marketing tool combined with DonorPerfect and fully integrated. So when a gift comes in, not only does that gift go to Sage Intacct for proper accounting, but it also puts that email address into Constant Contact in a segmented list so that if I wanted to be recognized and get notifications about the food pantry updates as opposed to the senior center, you can even do that kind of segmentation between the DonorPerfect data and your Constant Contact system. So I'm going to pass on that. I can also tell them how I heard about this organization, and then I can remember myself for the future. And we can even give them a little finishing video that's out there. That's an example of what a giving page could look like. Now I want to change the frame for just a moment. So we're sitting in the back of house, and we're now looking at the DonorPerfect or the Sage Intacct fundraising solution at our dashboard so we can actually see the different goals that we have and the different campaigns, the building goal, the bake sale goal, the major donor goal. All of these things can be individually tracked and configured by your team. But as I was saying to you, one of the most important things of any kind of fundraising CRM is the ability to manage your constituents or your donors, however you would choose to label that term. And one of the new things that we just created is this new donor scoring system, which is based on RFM technologies, which is about the recency and frequency and so forth of your gifts and the amplitude of your gifts. So that's one component of it, as well as the engagement. How much are they paying attention to the emails? Are they actually watching or volunteering some of their time? And that can be a factor, as well as the recency, like we talked about. When was the last time that the gift was given? So in here, I can take a look at my scores, and I can choose to do an outreach to one of my donors. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Roger, and it gives me a little bit of a notification saying, hey, this is a pretty important donor. Let's make sure that we work with them with care. They've given 38,000 lifetime. And their initial gift was in 2012, but they most recently gave on April 30th. So some real context here, and why would your fundraiser need to be looking up Roger Sandstone? The idea could be that a new gift just came in. They may want to handwrite a note to them, but if they're a new fundraising person, and we know that inside of this industry, there can be a churn and a turnover in as little as 18 months of your fundraising staff. So we're very sensitive to that. So your fundraising system needs to have really good notes and information embedded in it so that the next person that may need to come on and tackle the fundraising is able to, just hit the ground running. So some really key things here. We have Roger as an individual and all of his contact information, his address. One other piece that is included with DonorPerfect is the ability to overnight, every night, update the mailing address. Now, many of you should be doing direct mail as well as online giving. Both are very viable forms of gift giving. We're not out of the woods where we're, checks are a thing of the past or direct mail is a thing of the past. It's actually very successful, and we're still seeing that even the new generation is responding favorably to direct mail solicitations that are out there. So that said, having your mailing addresses correct is super important. So our United States Post Office will give you a change of address database that you can then apply to your system. So even if you were to get a new donor tomorrow, we will actually scan the system and make sure that the mailing address that was put in is actually correct for them and make any modifications overnight so that when you decide to do a solicitation, it's going to include the latest and the greatest addresses of everyone. So a few other things that we can look here is additional information. I didn't use my analogy yet of knowing whether or not your donors are cat lovers or puppy lovers. That actually matters because people respond more favorably to the kind of solicitation that they get if they feel that the organization knows them a little bit better. So I can put flags here on Roger Sandstone's notes. I can have a narrative that in April 14th, as the last person that spoke to him, knew that he was a member of the Hiawatha Country Club. We have calculated fields that are out there so that statistically can show you what his first gift was, what his yearly giving was in multiple years in the history. We talked a little bit about demographics, and this is the True Givers interface that does the address updates, but we also can get information on net worth so that we know when we go to make an ask of Roger whether or not he has material wealth that would enable him to contribute a little bit more. Because believe it or not, what you ask for is very, very important. And suggested asks, even in the online system, or if they're a major giver and you're going to take them to lunch, your donors can actually be offended if you don't ask for enough. Or if you ask for $500 when they were actually ready to give you $100,000, can decrease the amount of your gift. So coming into a meeting being very prepared and knowing about your donor and knowing what their capacity is super important to your success for your fundraising team. So we talked here a little bit about the RFM, recency frequency monetary calculations that contribute to Roger's actual donor score that we have inside of the system. So a few other pieces that you may want to be paying attention to. Our contact list is out here. This indicates the last time we made communication with Roger. Some of this information is historical, but we did a mailing code with a physical letter, sending a letter to all potential donors. There was a major giving letter, and we sent that in February. There was a phone call that was made to him back in March. I would highly suggest that it might be time to make a phone call again. The other piece that shows up in here is when there was an email that was sent to Roger, there's going to be a record of the campaign and whether or not he opened it and clicked it, so you can get a feel as to whether or not that's a material area that he's paying attention to inside of your organization. The bio field will also give you some of the vital stats that you may end up seeing inside of this area. We talked about major donor information. While the True Givers component that we have that does the address correction can tell you some of it, we also work with a product called Donor Search that will actually bring in other wealth indicators, even things like whether or not Roger is given to a political campaign, which is a major contributor to knowing whether or not he is going to become a major gift giver to your organization. Whether or not he's got contacts on your board, if he knows people in your staff. These are all really key pieces of information that we want to be able to collect on Roger as being a major donor. All of these sections can be customized and defined by you. You can eliminate them if there's not a need to have any kind of political information that's out there. Here's some additional wealth screening data that might be out there as well. So the real important last piece that I want to touch on is where we get into pledges and gifts. And so this is where, if you're on the financial side of fundraising, you need to, one, be able to keep accurate track of all of the gifts that Roger's given over time, the funds that he's given them to, the solicitation and campaigns that he may have given them to, because those are things that your fundraiser is going to care about, to know whether or not we should be doing the bake sale next year, to know whether or not the basket raffle was material or the 5K run. Those statistics are things that the DonorPerfect system and Sage Intacct Fundraising cares dearly about, because we want to help the fundraiser to know what to do again and what not to do again from a fundraiser perspective. But it also, if I go ahead and click on one of these gifts, is super important, because this is how the information gets coded and translated into Sage Intacct. So one of the key things that Sage did when they built the integration to DonorPerfect is they took things like the donor type and the gift type here, which is Visa, the general ledger, solicitation, sub-solicitation, and campaign, and they created every combination of all the things inside of the DonorPerfect system that could happen for what the client has defined. And they allow that to then get mapped to dimensions inside of Sage Intacct. So the really key thing here is, and even if your fundraiser decided, and hopefully this really hasn't happened to anybody, but the fundraiser decided to take in a gift and they decided to code it in a way that they made up their own general ledger inside of the DonorPerfect system, the integration will actually trap it and it will get flagged so that the financial person can then see that it's not going to make its way in until this thing is corrected and a mapping is created to it, and then we can remedy it and make sure that the batch goes all the way in. So some really key checks and balances that exist between the integration, and it's all about creating trust between the systems, right? We know that's part of this, but also the speed at which you're able to report on financial numbers is going to become critical. I'm going to touch on one other point, and that is pledges and commitments and monthly commitments and future commitments and so forth that a donor may make. There is the option to actually post those to accounts receivable inside of Sage Intacct, and as they begin to pay down their commitment, that will then relieve your AR. So that is something that we may be able to expand a little bit further on when Doug begins to speak with you. So that said, I've touched on the key things in DonorPerfect in terms of constituent management. We also have receipts and the ability to do mail merges for solicitations, and our own reporting and dashboard engine, which you've just seen a little bit of a taste of, as well as some of the other apps and tools that are out there and available to you. So with that, I actually want to turn it over to Doug, who will begin to show you a little bit more about how this data translates into Sage Intacct.
That was fantastic, Daryl. Thanks so much. I get excited every time I see and talk about DonorPerfect. And as everyone saw, DonorPerfect is an incredible platform to accept those gifts as well as pledges. And then connected to Sage Intacct Fundraising, we give it a 360-degree view. And I promise you, Sage Intacct Fundraising is truly a not-for-profit product. In fact, the majority of CFOs, 78%, have said that they love Sage Intacct and only wish they would have switched to it sooner. So let's start off with a little bit of navigation and perhaps even a couple of comments, or I should say concepts that you might not be familiar with. The one thing that we're going to get out of Sage Intacct is the ability to design unlimited dashboards that are specific to either the role a person is playing or your company. And if you look at the top of this dashboard, you're going to see 4 boxes. These boxes are called performance cards, and they can bring in either financial information or statistical information, right? So we can grab that data and have it mapped from either an Excel spreadsheet or DonorPerfect to get whatever you need to capture as far as statistical data. And if, for example, you wanted to combine that statistical data with financial data into one performance card, you can indeed do formula calculations. You'll notice the next component, program expenses. Follow me horizontally. You're actually looking at the rows of expenses, but it's actually capturing it by program. Counseling service, youth center, food service, outreach, all programs. I love this one down here, which is actually letting you see meals served by sites. So if you think about this, we're keeping track of programs separately, meals separately, sites separately, volunteers separately. I'm going to walk through a few more dashboards because I get so excited about these dashboards. Number one, notice that at any time you can change the date of this. This is real-time updated information. This is not being entered into batches. It's being posted real-time. This particular one is set up for a school nonprofit. So we're looking at students, counseling services, and youth service programs. Tuition by campus with student count, so we can keep track of the individual locations. We've got a few not-for-profit schools as companies that we work with that do keep track of those variety of locations. This one is important because this is for a membership type of organization, right? So we're keeping track of the number of members, number of membership renewals. Still all not-for-profit, but this not-for-profit has members that it needs to keep track of, right? We worked with a nonprofit manufacturing organization recently that has members that it needs to keep track of. And it also, in this example, is breaking down the revenue by revenue source. If you want to see that in financial terms, you simply click it or go back to the graph. And all of this information, believe it or not, it's actually coming out of either a report or the general ledger. This is one of my favorites because it's actually looking at grants. If you look at this middle component, you're going to see the rows are actual grants that the system is tracking. And then follow me horizontally left to right. It's looking at our awards, our revenue, our awarded amount, our revenue booked, remaining draw, and expenditures inception to date. In fact, you can go as far as to actually add commitments to that as well, right? To see the total true remaining spend. All of these are reports by nature. So if I drill down on any one of these reports, it does allow me to go all the way either into the general ledger or the source transaction. So in this example, looking at a specific grant, I'm comparing my operating budget versus my actual. When I drill down on my actuals, it's going all the way into the general ledger. It's one source of truth. And I can go all the way down to the journal entry level. And in this example, it's not only going into the journal entry, but that particular transaction was generated by an invoice. So it went all the way into the invoice. One of the unique concepts, there's two unique concepts that I want to share with you in Sage Intacct. The first one is the ability to track individual entities. And for a nonprofit, often our entities are, it could be a grant, it could be a foundation. It's typically a unique company that has an FEIN. Doesn't necessarily have to have an FEIN, but it does. The reason this is important is that all of the data that you enter is shared amongst the entities. It's not like some of the legacy products where you've got to create a chart or a set of vendors or a set of customers or grants that are specific to each entity, which results ultimately in inefficiencies and having to maintain multiple companies. For you, for Sage Intacct, all of your master file data is shared amongst all of your entities. What do I mean by that? Let's take a look at our chart of accounts. Our chart of accounts has 148 items. You can see that at the bottom right. You can also see that our chart of accounts is only a natural account, 4 digits. It is not a segmented account that is often common in legacy products. Often, if you needed to keep track of revenue, you would often see a chart of accounts that is divided into segments so that you can keep track of the grant or the project or the territory or location or whatever additional information that you need to keep track of. In Sage Intacct, you don't need to do that. You only need to keep track of one natural account, 4110. And the reason is because we use the concept of dimensions. I've actually seen case studies where customers had 2, 3, 4,000 individual accounts and brought it down to 150. What does a dimension look like? A dimension is a piece of data that is tagged as you enter data. So if I drill down on this specific account number, it's 4110, my contributions account. At the bottom of the screen, you are going to see my individual dimensions that I can use when I do transactions. Think of a journal entry. Think of an accounts payable bill. Think of a grant invoice. All of those have line items when I enter the data. Instead of having to worry about a segmented chart of accounts or segmented account number with 4 or 5 segments, I enter one natural account and then I choose the segments that are specific to my company. In this case, we have a department segment, a fund segment, a grant segment, a restriction segment, all terms that are very, very common in the not-for-profit industry. When I drill down and I start to do a journal entry, you will see horizontally, I have the ability to actually tag each line of the transaction to the specific segment or dimension that I'm interested in. In this example, 5202 legal fees, I'm posting it to Fund 404, Department 120, Site is Main, my grant is 404, and it's coming from an unrestricted fund or grant. The same is true for each individual line item. The beauty of this system is that it actually then allows inter-entity transactions to be transacted automatically. And you can see that happen at the bottom of the screen. Because my fund or location dimension is multiple entities, the system automatically created my due tos and my due froms for me. A big time saver. One of the things I love about the general ledger report, and we're all very, very familiar with a basic general ledger report, is that I can see that dimensional data on the report. Right here, I'm saying, show me the GL data for January 20 through end date December 23 for one account, my contributions account. Look what I'm looking at the top of the screen. I'm seeing all of my individual transactions by month, of course, but in addition to that, I'm seeing the individual dimensions that it was tagged with. Department, fund, grant, and I can actually add more dimensions to this report. What if, to show you the true power of this product, what if I wanted to see this report, but I was actually doing some analysis on grant 130, my outreach campaign? I simply change the filter and I will now only see transactions that are specific to grant 130. And of course, I can still drill all the way down to the general ledger. This is the data, by the way, that's going to come in from DonorPerfect, right? You're going to get all of this individual data. And as a byproduct, you're going to end up with a financial system that can run the reports and the dashboards that are critical to your industry. Sage Intacct will also keep track of your grants. That's a huge, huge plus because not only that, it's actually keeping track of any deferred revenue, your cash expenses, actual revenue, COGS, non-COGS expenses, even breaks it down into buckets just for salaries and wages. What that allows you to do is get reports based on grants. In fact, the system will actually get out all of your mission critical statement reports or functional reports so that you can then give those to the appropriate government entities. Many companies, in fact, even keep a track of time, be it actual time or volunteer time, against grants. Couple more points that I think are really, really critical. One of them is the ability to have what's called spend management in Sage Intacct. What that allows you to do is if you're doing a purchase order or an accounts payable bill, you're going to see a new button here called Show Spend Insight. So as I start to enter a line item, this happens to be office supplies. Follow me horizontally, it's showing you the grant, the department, the site, all of the dimensional data. It's for $5,000. When I click Show Spend Insight, it's actually showing me in live real-time output exactly where I stand on the budget for this item. For office supplies, for my specific department, 230. It's showing me my budget is 27,000, my actual is 25,000. I have committed expenses in 5,000, and it's showing me that my funds available are a minus 2954. With this type of functionality, it can either stop the user or warn the user, depending on how you set it up. And finally, in both accounts payable and purchasing, there's built-in workflow. By workflow, I mean you have the ability to approve vendors. You have the ability to approve bills, approve payment requests, approve vendor invoices or purchase requisitions. Very, very common to implement that type of workflow in a not-for-profit. With that, I think Sage Intacct is absolutely a game changer, and it's a transformational product to take your your mission to the next level. Jared?
All right, thank you both. Nicole, I'm going to pass it back over to you, and then I'm going to pull up some questions that we have from the chat here. Okay, so while we're waiting for the deck, the first question that we had come in is, what about grabbing my historical accounting data into Intacct?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we've got tools within Sage Intacct to bring in all of that data for you. It's part of the implementation, and we can bring in as little or as much data as you prefer. The norm is 2 years plus current year. But the norm, if that doesn't work for you, we can certainly bring in more. And of course, we bring in all open AP, open AR, and whatever other transactions that you need.
Awesome. I think another one kind of following up on that is, if I'm on Sage 100 and I move to Sage Intacct, what happens to my Sage 100 data?
Yeah, that's another absolutely great question. So because Sage Intacct and Sage 100 are both under the Sage family, we make sure, DSD makes sure that there's no interruption to your Sage 100 service as you're migrating to Sage Intacct. When you're actually migrated and live and everything is good, eventually your Sage 100 becomes a read-only database well after you've migrated. And at that point, you'll still be able to access the data. You just won't be able to input more data.
Okay. And then the last one we have for right now is, how long does a typical implementation take?
So a typical implementation, we say that it's typically 3 to 4 months from start to finish. That involves everything you would imagine from a kickoff meeting, and we see it all the way through your first close cycle. And then after closing your first month, it's a very, very simple transition to our support team, which also happens to be our implementation team. We absolutely pride ourselves on the service that we provide. So it's a very, very smooth transition, and your system and your workflow with Sage 100 or whatever system you're on is never down.
Great. Okay. Well, that's all the questions we have right now. Nicole and Daryl, I don't know if you guys have some typical questions that you get asked that maybe we can answer now that might help in the future. But if not, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Can you hear me, Jared?
Yes. Yep.
I was just going to say, sometimes the question is, where do I start? Or maybe, is this right for me? And I just want to offer that we can definitely do a session. It can be between 30 and 45 minutes where we just really talk through what your goals are with your org, what systems you're using, and how we may be able to drive some change and value for you. It's no pressure, but it's definitely worth the time to take to see how you can be doing things better. I know that this is a lot to absorb in the time that we had, so please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help.